It should work now. Yes. Yes.
Can switch.
Oh. Good. Good job. Thank you. All right, so I talked about the attacks, and we're going to talk about the targets and some of the techniques used by state actors against banks. And I do have some videos that I want to share as well. We do have sound, and that should work. In the U.S., we have 18 critical infrastructure sectors that we have identified. Honestly, banking and finance, from my perspective and my view, would be very juicy. If you can actually bring down banks, you have great capabilities as a state actor. We stop the money flow, and then you can actually bring an entire country to its knees. So that's why it's this is such an important critical infrastructure sector. And from all of these sectors, they all have cyber in them. So they all become targets. It's just that banking is about money. And that's definitely something that becomes a huge, huge, juicy target. Have you guys heard of this initiative from Cisco? Okay, Cisco has an amazing plan for Israel. Israel will become an example of a connected nation in the next 7 years. It'll be the most advanced country in the world. And this is done with Cisco, Via Europa, and Israel Electric Corp. And the interesting thing about this is the fact that every business and every house will have 1 gigabit per second available to them. So we're talking about really fat pipes going into your houses and businesses. So you're looking at speeds of OC12 pipes. Right now, that's an average of $100,000 a month if you want to have an OC12 pipe going into your house or your business. The plan is to have Israel running at super high speeds. Now, this is a great thing for banking, because everybody's going to want to do banking online, and for businesses and innovation and everything else. But also, at the same time, it could be a disaster if security is not really built in, because what does that do? You create a huge threat surface. When you're highly dependable on the internet as a country to survive, that could be very dangerous if your security strategy is not well defined. We can think about Estonia. General Shaw was in Estonia presenting, I remember, when he was active. We have in Estonia, I present every year. CSFI is there every year, and we run workshops and everything. They were attacked by the Russians. And the very first target, guess what? Banking. Nobody could, perform transactions, so it was definitely an issue. Okay, today, more than 50% of banking in Europe and in the U.S. is actually done online. I have a bank that I go through called Ally. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Ally, but it's 100% online. They have no branches. I've never seen one human being. Never talked to anyone. Everything is online. All of my transactions, everything that I do. And with Israel actually moving towards this super high internet, being super connected, What do you think that's going to happen with the 50%? Right? Everybody's going to want to do online banking. Now, branch banking is actually going away because it's very expensive. It'll take a bank an investment of £1,000, more than $1,000 per client a year to maintain it. If you want to have someone to talk to you face to face, if you want to go to a bank, that costs a lot of money. Then $100 per person if you want to have phone banking. But then you go down to £1, a little bit more than almost $2 of costs for just one client a year. So you go from 1,000 to 1. So you can save a lot of money by actually doing online banking only. But guess what? State actors, cyber commands, they love it. Because if you rely on that, you're such a target. So if you don't have a really, really strong cybersecurity strategy for your banking, that's definitely a problem. It could be a problem. Now, who here has heard of Operation Babel? Okay, so we have one person. Now, this was an operation against U.S. banks, and we had more than 15 banks in the U.S., and the largest banks actually down offline for more than 249 hours. The main form of attack was DDoS, the DOS attacks. And I'm going to talk about some of those attacks and how they're becoming so sophisticated now. Now, DDoS was actually the weapon of choice for this form of attack. This was a serious operation. This is because of the movie, The Innocence of Muslims, I believe so. I actually tried to watch the movie on YouTube, but it was really boring, so I had to drop it. I couldn't finish it, so I don't know. But because of that movie, this operation took place. The government says, well, some organizations claim that Iran was actually behind the attack, and they used some interesting combinations of DDoS attacks, and I'm going to talk about that. Now, I just want to give you a background, so I'm going to run a video. We should have sound, so you can...
Good evening. Diane is on special assignment this Thursday. We're going to tell you more about that in a bit, but we begin tonight with cyber warfare. The most extensive attack on American banks ever, launched from the Middle East, happening right now. Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, U.S. Bancorp, and today PNC. America's biggest banks, with millions of American families locked out of their accounts online. So what does it mean for your money? Who's behind it? How long has it been happening? Officials across the government are tracking the attacks, working to keep them from becoming financial nightmares. ABC senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas starts us off.
Tonight, the financial and banking industry is on high alert as a massive cyber attack remains underway. Potentially millions of customers trying to bank online this week blocked. Among the targets, Bank of America, PNC, and Wells Fargo.
There is an elevated level of threat. The threat is now high.
Sources tell ABC News it's a denial of service attack, where hackers from the Middle East have secretly commandeered thousands of computers worldwide. Those computers, or zombies, have overwhelmed bank websites with a barrage of electronic traffic. Different banks have been targeted on different days. Today it was PNC's turn.
We tried for 3 hours to get on PNC's website, but we couldn't get through.
On Facebook today, frustrated customers. Cynthia Shrim wrote, trying to pay bills. This is ridiculous. Stacy Briggs Gerlach posted, hopefully it can be up soon. Never realized how dependent I am on it. A group of hackers calling themselves Izzadin al-Qassam warned the financial industry it was going to attack in retaliation for that controversial film that sparked outrage in the Muslim world. The scary thing is that even with the warning, the attack could not be stopped.
The threats are getting increasingly sophisticated.
The U.S. suspects hackers in Iran may be involved.
This is the first time that we know about where a Middle Eastern entity, perhaps a Middle Eastern government, has attacked websites of critical infrastructure in the United States.
The hackers have not been able to steal any money in these attacks or disrupt financial markets, but authorities fear the next generation of wide-scale cyber assaults could be far more devastating.
And if they get inside the banks, they can move money around and cause financial chaos.
So, Pierre, the hackers are blanketing the banks with these attacks right now, but to reiterate the bottom line, so far, everyone's money is safe.
That's right, George. To be clear, no money has been stolen yet, but many people trying to bank online could not for a time get access to their accounts. You can see how that could make it difficult for a small business. So that's why tonight the government is working so hard to locate and block those ongoing attacks.
Okay, thanks very much. The race for the White House now.
Okay, so that's an interesting video. And as you can see, the main goal here was disruption, just trying to get the banks not to be able to do what they do. Now, when you hear a congressman, a U.S. congressman like Mike Rogers talk about this issue, the way that he talked about that there was a dangerous level against our national security, we should take that seriously, and this is definitely an issue. And why, these attacks were so dangerous? Well, one, we had loss of communication. So in any warfare operations, what do you do first? Communications, right? C2. That's what you want. You want to make sure that there's no communications, that there's no way that banks in this case can communicate with their clients. So that's really military-like. Then there's a loss of money because they lost a lot of money because of it. I mean, 15 major banks in the U.S. I also deal with Wells Fargo, and I was trying to pay some of my instructors, and I couldn't do that, and they were very upset. So that was an issue. And then loss of trust. I mean, you have a bank, you trust your bank. You have your money there. So as a client, I want to make sure that I have access to my money at all times. So that's why this is so important. Now, these are the 5 Ds of cyberspace operations, also known as cyber warfare. This is a common doctrine and technique in the U.S. That we use as a way to engage in cyber operations. In this case, it was the disrupt, deny, and degrade. So they used 3 Ds out of the 5 Ds for cyber operations to actually attack the U.S. So this is they're military-minded. Whoever ran the attack, most likely Iran. Then there's some explanation here on the 5 Ds. You're going to actually have access to the slides, so you can get more details on the 5 Ds. And this is, by the way, open source, unclassified, so no problems there. Now, this is a report that, it's a report from CSFI. We had a report on layer 7 DOS attacks. This is 2010. And there's actually 2 forms of DDoS attacks. You have a layer 4 DOS attack, and that's your traditional attack, pretty much trying to overload your internet pipe with a bunch of packets. Okay, this is at the layer 4, layer 3, and it's fairly easy to protect yourself against that. And again, this is many attackers on one target. So there's a tool called LOIC. Have you guys heard of this tool, LOIC? It's a favorite anonymous. They love to use it. So they get thousands or millions of people engaging in DDoS against a certain target. So they overload the pipes and the telcos with a lot of traffic. But this is easy to defend against because all we have to do is just black hole the traffic. I was a chief security engineer for AT&T. I worked for with the DDoS protection service, and all we had to do was just buy blades, huge routers, and just redirect the traffic. So that's pretty much what you have to do. The service is very expensive, but it's not too hard to protect yourself against that. Then you have the layer 7 DOS attack. Those attacks, they exploit things like HTTP, FTP. Okay, got 5 minutes. There's a platform called Xerxes, developed by the Jester. I don't know if you guys know the Jester. This is a GUI platform that runs layer 7 DOS attacks. And they're more difficult to protect against because they usually go through the firewalls. Your IPS will not see it, and they're very sophisticated, and they target FTP, HTTP, and whatnot, the layer 7 applications, so they get through. And also, this is one attacker, and you don't have to actually use a botnet to do this. You don't have to have thousands or millions of bots to do something like that. We actually replicated this attack in our labs, and it was pretty easy. Just using 3 machines, we're able to take down an IIS or Microsoft server fully patched, running a website. We're also able to take down an Apache server, and I was able to take down our CSFI website when I was actually trying this. So it's just not too hard to engage in layer 7 DOS attacks. It's very subtle. You can use stealth capabilities, use proxy service to hide it, low bandwidth. Some of those attacks you can actually use a 3G connection. You can use your phone to take down a bank. It's not that hard to do it if you know how to actually use the technique. It looks like normal traffic, and it's really hard to defend against that. Now, just imagine if you have layer 7 DOS attacks in a really well-coordinated fashion. Like Xerxes, that's the platform. It's not in the public domain, by the way. Now, this is an example of, it's got some music. But this is us, CSFI, taking down a Microsoft server, fully patched. Only using 3 machines. That's it. Okay, we don't have time to go through the Apache attack, but that was just an example of what 3 machines can actually do if you're running the right code. We actually captured that code from China, as a matter of fact. And it was an interesting piece of code, and we're able to play with it. And they have some really interesting variations. Some of our connections in China and Singapore, they've been working really hard creating different varieties of layer 7 DOS attacks. Those are some of the defenses that you can have. So you're going to have the slides, and you can actually go through it. It's just really hard to protect yourself against the layer 7 DOS attacks. And the attacks that were actually deployed against our banks in the U.S., they were a combination of layer 4, like LOIC attacks, and then layer 7. That's why the banks were down and having such a hard time, because the attack was sophisticated, and then you have a state actor behind it with intent, the money, the skills, and the time to do it. So this is definitely a cyber weapon that if you use this well, you will be successful. Now, questions? Yes, sir.
No, just one question.
Oh, one question. I'm allowed one question. Okay. One question. No questions? You don't want the source code for the actual? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
תודה רבה.